Chapter 45. The Seraphim's eyes slowly scanned the bell tower in search of any sign of his opponent, but he found the room empty. Nothing felt notable as he made his way around the giant bell situated in the center, a few old, worn mallets at its side. "Come on out." He threw a fist into the instrument and produced a light ring. "Face me now and I'll end it quick. It's far better than you've given me." As he looked to the other side of the bell, he noticed a ladder reaching the room overhead. A small smile crossed his face as he walked forward and climbed up. A trap door sat just above his head. As the Seraphim pushed it open, he took a kick to the face, a force enough to make him relinquish his hand on the ladder. He looked up again and caught sight of Angel as she jumped. Both of her feet landed on his face and forced him to release his hold. The lost grip made him shout as he fell onto his back on the floor. Angel took a few steps back, drew her katana, and stood ready to face him. The Seraphim pushed back to his feet, wiped the flowing blood from his nose, mouth, and scar. "You really don't know when to stand down, do you? I'd finish this right now with a bullet in your skull, but you cooked all my ammunition with that little stunt downstairs. I guess you willingly surrendered an easy death." "You could have a soft defeat," Angel said. "Give yourself up. Call them off. My faith means nothing if I believe you can't be redeemed." The vaunt of moral superiority was only in the Seraphim's mind. Angel's words were genuine, but the claim was enough to make him rush at her again to resume their battle. Through the bell tower the two angels clashed. The clang of their blades rang off the walls of each new strike and revised tactic. For Angel's part, the torment the Seraphim forced her to endure had slowed and sped her. The exhaustion of those days, the continued ache of his torture, were at odds with how she felt determined to punish her captor. And not only for her sake, but for the rest who had endured as she had. And for Joshua, who, without faith in heaven or hope of a great reward, still traded his life for hers. The Seraphim could not die, but Angel swore he would not die. Neither fought with the same precision they had earlier. Both were in too much pain and fighting off too much exhaustion to do battle properly. The mental process was replaced with conviction as the two continued to clash. The Seraphim went for more overhead slashes and any attack that could press the advantage of his towering height. Angel maintained her more light-footed approach. For the moment, survival was her greatest priority. There was no obvious way to defeat the immortal she stood against, but she had to keep trying and keep experimenting. As the blade swung down at her, Angel leapt backwards and, with another step, trapped the sword beneath her feet. With a lunge, she grabbed a hold of one of the Seraphim's arms and delivered a few well-placed strikes to its various pressure points. The Seraphim uttered a pained groan and his arm did, indeed, seem to go limp. That was a good sign. Angel maintained a firm grip on the wrist and flipped him around. The arm let off a crack as it twisted and snapped backwards. When the Seraphim let loose a roar of pain, she felt sure she was finally making progress, but didn't allow herself to relish the moment. With a turnaround, he kicked her in the face and knocked her several feet back. When the room stopped spinning, Angel looked up at the Seraphim as he gripped his broken arm with his good one, and sickeningly snapped it back into place. After a few shakes, it appeared fully functional again. Damn. So his pressure points could be exploited and his bones could be broken, but he only needed a matter of seconds to recover the use of them. But he also had to snap them back into place? It seemed like a decent thing to test, but she doubted whether she was quick enough to break both of the Seraphim's arms one right after another. Her eyes and thoughts then turned to the room above the bell tower. Perhaps she could put that to her advantage again. As the Seraphim rushed at her, she dodged his strike and ran up the ladder to the opposite side of the room. "You think I'm falling for that again?" Seraphim balked. "You'll have to try harder than that." Angel made her way into the small upper room, desperate to catch her breath as she shut and locked the trap door. The Seraphim followed a moment later. Pounds shook at the door, and within a few strikes, he broke through. His hand fumbled around in search of the lock to allow himself into the tiny room. Angel contemplated attacking the hand and forcing him away, but she knew the next attempt required him to make it through. After a little more struggle, he managed to unlock the door and force his way into the room. He was wary of the way Angel did not repeat her previous strategy to try and force him down the ladder. The two took their stances and began swinging at one another again, though Angel had a clear endgame in mind. 4 stained glass windows surrounded the 4 sides of the room. A careless slash by the Seraphim shattered one of them and tossed the glass outside. Angel mentally noted this as the 2 locked blades. The Seraphim appeared pleased by this as well, as he grabbed a hold of Angel by the face and thrust her toward the window behind her. The impact shattered the glass and she felt tiny shards nick the back of her neck. Angel cringed and quickly pushed away to regain her composure. The Seraphim rushed toward her, but she dodged to his side and drove a few more fingers' worth of pressure points into his right arm, which forced him to release his grip on the blade. "Enough of this already!" The Seraphim struggled to swing his 2-handed sword with just one. As he tried to regain his center of gravity, Angel kicked him toward the trap door. The sole of one of the Seraphim's boots slipped into the hole he'd punched through the trap door, further knocking him off balance until he tripped backwards. His body landed against one of the 2 windows still intact. Angel rushed to the opposite side of the room, drew her grappling hook, fired at the ceiling, jumped toward the Seraphim, and delivered a 2-footed fly kick. The attack was enough to throw the Seraphim out the window. The shattering of glass overrode his shout of pain and fear. His body crashed into the mounting snow of the cathedral's roof. His sword fell from the top of the church and impacted the snow several yards away. On the roof, the Seraphim groaned in pain. Angel carefully observed him to see if she'd finally done what was necessary. As she watched for his response, she brought the headphones around her neck to her ears again in desperate wonder for what was going on in the underground chapel. The ferocious melee had only intensified since she heard it begin. The Seraphim's many loyal servants and a dozen cherubim battled at Lester's orders. Against them remained the fractured bat family, the birds of prey, and a select few who had come to question the Seraphim's orders after Batman's questioning. Lester retreated to the back of the room and swore to set off all the bombs prematurely if anyone came near him. "Listen up, Bat," one of the reformers said, finding himself fighting side by side with his old enemy. We want to help you, after all you said, but they're not making this easy. I have a gun, I could shoot 'em, but it's not your way, and it can't be God's way then. Anything else I can work with?" Batman grabbed a hold of his uneasy ally as he dodged strikes from a cherubim. "What was it that happened before? When Black Canary screamed and it sent you into a frenzy?" It's that pitch," the man said. "We used to hear it in the Epiphany Chamber. It brings nightmares and fantasies to life. At least it does for us. Makes me wonder." Batman turned toward the rest of the congregation. "You're nuts!" Robin had to shout to be heard. "That's how they beat us before, and you want to give them that advantage again?" "I'm not doing the call again," Black Canary called over her own battle. "It's gotten us in enough trouble tonight, Batman. Even the psychopath in the preacher clothes seems affected by it. I screw with him and he could set off those bombs by accident." "And we wouldn't want that, now would we?" "Well, we weren't exactly ready last time, were we?" Blackhawk spoke over her own duel with an ox. "And we got a few of them on our side already. They're not going to kill you guys without the order, at least." "I don't want to..." Huntress tried to speak before she was knocked to the ground by the force of a lion. When he approached her in the down state, she fired a bolt between his eyes and forced herself back to her feet. "I don't want to risk my life on a gamble that might just make these bastards more aggressive." "Yeah? Or maybe it'll wake them up to what's real." One of the deserters spoke up as he fought off one of his brethren. "Epiphany does crazy things to people." "It's not happening," Black Canary said. "This is bad enough as it is." Batman remained close to the defectors. He feared for their safety the most. He would not surrender the idea he could still manipulate the Cry and their mental states. He just wasn't sure how yet. Angel didn't have time to think long on Batman's situation. She cringed as the Seraphim pressed his hand against the roof and forced himself upwards. A terrible gash in his left shoulder painted the piled snow red. In spite of her disgust, Angel kept careful attention on the process. Where his shoulder had lain, there was a bloody roof decoration, which had clearly impaled him. He hadn't been able to push up with both arms at once, only the one that hadn't been stabbed through. If something obstructed the wound, Angel noted, he might not be able to heal immediately, or possibly heal at all until the path was cleared. Angel sheathed her katana, descended the ladder, drew 2 more batarangs, and approached the Seraphim, determined to test the theory. Back on his feet, but separated from his blade, the Seraphim dived at Angel with his fists. An act she blocked quickly. With the first batarang at the ready, she swiftly stabbed into his lower right forearm. After another shout, the Seraphim's fist instantly loosened, and he managed to punch her in the face with a hook from his left. Again, Angel fell to the ground. Blood and bile rose in her mouth as she pushed up from the snow and, without hesitation, stabbed the Seraphim in his other forearm. Almost immediately, it too went limp at his side. The Seraphim looked between his hands in disbelief before he started to throw kicks at Angel, which she swiftly dodged with relative ease. For a moment, Angel allowed herself to smile. Could victory really be this much closer than she dared to believe? The smile was premature. With another lunge and kick, Angel was knocked against the wooden wall of the bell tower. As her vision struggled to return to normal, she saw the Seraphim raise his arm to his mouth, gouge the batarang out with his teeth, and it appeared feeling instantly returned to his hand. As he removed the other batarang, he held them both up for her to see and said, "Your turn." With that, he thrust the two blades into Angel's palms, pinning her to the wall of the tower. In spite of her best efforts, Angel could not stop herself from letting loose a scream of pain as she was bloodily ensnared. She jerked about and struggled, but failed to escape. With a quick motion, the Seraphim pulled Angel's katana from its sheath and tossed it aside. With his opponent now secured, the Angel stepped back into the bell tower just long enough to obtain one of the large mallets used to ring the bells. "I could have just shot you. I could have just cut your throat. Now I'm going to beat your face until your precious Batman won't even recognize you anymore." The Seraphim took his first swing. Angel managed to force her neck far enough out of the way that he broke into the wall of the bell tower. At the second swing, Angel wiggled one of the batarangs out of her hands, which allowed her enough freedom to dodge the strike. She then tried to free her other hand, but just as she did, the Seraphim thrust the head of the mallet into her belly. With a cry of agony, Angel fell to her knees, clenched her gut, and grit her teeth harder than she had all night. When she looked up, Angel saw the Seraphim as he raised the hammer again, intent on smashing in her head like he promised. Her eyes searched back and forth, desperate for some way to regain her advantage. There had to be something she could do. There had to be something she could do. She couldn't die now! In the midst of her search, she received her answer. The sound of the battle and the voice of God's chapel had mostly been a dull roar until then, but something changed, something worth noticing. Out of all the yells and static, there came a scream that threatened to shatter the headset itself, a scream far too high-pitched for any normal human being. As the battle raged on, Black Canary's conviction was finally broken, and with it came a delayed release of the Canary Call. As the call was unleashed, the fundamentalists and the deserters alike were again ensnared and overwhelmed by the chemicals flooding within their minds. Lester remained only in slightly better control as he continued shouting orders at the cherubim. "Don't any of you defect on me now!" he screamed. "We've come so close to our glory! Don't let them capture your hearts! Do not let Satan have you!" "Don't continue taking orders from this madman," Batman said in reply. "Do your God's will, and put an end to this insanity, once and for all." "Canary's call definitely makes him more aggressive," Robin had to shout over the monstrous cries of the opposition, and struck parishioners and two cherubim, a lion and a hawk, with his staff any time they came too close. "I knew this was a terrible idea." Huntress desperately threw punches and kicks while standing back to back with Lady Blackhawk. "They've just gone crazier." "I don't know, Hell." Blackhawk gave the best half-smile she could muster. "I'll always take strong, dumb ones over weaker, wise guys. Why do you think me and the old team like fighting Nazis so much?" Still, the battle seemed no closer to its completion. Every new attack thrown by the heroes that made contact, thanks to the increased sloppiness of their opponents, was met with increasingly enraged resistance. Nightwing at one point yelled that he'd been bitten and there was a canine stuck in his wrist. All the while, Lester remained in the back of the chapel. One eye kept watch on the impending countdown, and gave him a moment to notice the two canary calls nearly shattered the stained glass wall behind him. 20 minutes, and all the sinners in Gotham would go up in smoke. As the canary call passed through the headset and reached her ears, time slowed from Angel's perspective. The snow all around her began to appear stained with blood. The night sky shone a sickening maroon, and all color faded from the Seraphim's body, his pupils like orbs of milk swimming in oceans of onyx. All rational thought left her in that moment. Those eyes, those horrible eyes he kept hidden so long, they needed to never open again. There was no plan, no greater goal to be accomplished. She just tossed one of the batarangs that had bloodied them both, and threw it at those haunting pools. The Seraphim grabbed at the wound as the blade cut through his eye, blinded and screaming. Angel pushed to her feet and began sinking her fists into his face, but particularly that other eye, over and over again. When the eye seemed swollen shut, she thrust the Seraphim forward, knocked him onto his back, knelt on his chest, and beat at his face. It had been ages since she had cut loose like this. Punches that could break concrete were sent over and over into the madman. She fought through her suffering as a sight of red burst from the black and white. The Seraphim pushed and struggled to protect his face and return to his feet, but the sudden influx of hallucinogens running through Angel's brain would not allow him an inch. Blow after blow she dug in, until she was sure all she could feel the Seraphim doing in response was shudder and shake. At last, he struggled to get a few words out as she sent his 2 front teeth down his throat. "No, that's enough!" pleading in his voice. "Please, enough! Enough!" Her voice broke. "Enough for who?" With each new demand, she sank another punch into his increasingly pulp-like face. "Enough for Sadie? Enough for Joshua? Enough for me? Please!" The Seraphim continued. Not what Christ wanted." It came out as a scream. "What would you know?" "Always must forgive, to be forgiven." At this, Angel froze mid-punch, stared at the Seraphim as the world around her slowly returned to color and life. She unclenched her fist, covered now in his blood and bile. A disgust slowly overtook her as the world came back into focus. "Those words. Jesus' words." Angel looked down at her bloodied mess of an opponent. "Yes, Christ's words." He struggled to speak through his broken face and choking. "Even you said, none of this is worth it if I can't be redeemed." Angel rose from her position, pulled off her mask, and tried her best to wipe away the tears. For a moment, it all seemed so familiar. Even if he couldn't die, she couldn't bring herself to bring on more pain than she had to. And she was reminded of the feeling of life leaving a body. First darkness, then nothing at all. She swore she left that world behind, and that she would never return. "Such a good girl you are. So obedient. And the old man claimed I couldn't think for myself." Angel turned just in time to dodge the Seraphim as he again lunged at her with the hammer raised over his head. He drove the makeshift weapon into the roof. With her quick evasion, he broke through the thin layer of tile and shingles. As he continued to attack, Angel realized how much damage he was doing to the roof around them, and tried to yell, "Stop!" But it was too late. By his 12th strike of desperation against her, a chunk of the roof finally cracked and gave way beneath them. The two fell at least 5 stories. Both yelled in shock at the sudden fall until the 2 bodies smashed into the church floor again. Neither was in any condition to fight anymore. It had only been the imminence of true death that put either in such dire straits. The fall should have killed them both. Both should have been defeated at the very least, but their simultaneous groans of pain confirmed that their battle was not yet finished. Angel's armor absorbed most of the impact, and the Seraphim just wouldn't stay broken. "We are minutes away," the Seraphim spoke as feeling slowly returned to his body. "No matter what you did, no matter what you believe could have been done, it never would have mattered. You, me, every single heathenistic fool in Gotham is about to die. God's will be done, little angel." The unmasked, nearly defeated Angel glared at her opponent. Was he right? Had everything she'd done been in vain? The Seraphim was still going to destroy the cathedral. Lester would still blow up every other church in Gotham. Countless would be dead, the one hope she had of stopping it. No, not too late. Never too late. Not for God. and with a little of her remaining strength, Angel brought her hands together and began to silently pray. Before she could get out a single thought like that, the nearly destroyed headphones let out another terrible noise, this time a crash and, moments thereafter, a scream from Lester. "Oh God! No! Please! No!" Minutes remained before Lester's finger would at last meet the trigger of the insidious weapon held in his hands. Minutes before the beginning of midnight mass. Destruction loomed over everything. And as hard as the Batman family, the Birds of Prey, and the deserters fought, the cherubim and the many ravenous servants of the seraphim still kept everyone far from Lester. Hearts and morale sank with every passing minute as the seraphim's plan inched closer towards fruition. How could he be stopped? "I told you all, didn't I? Only God can save you now. And He won't, because God is ours. He is the master beyond all masters, and none could ever dream to stand against us." In the midst of his rant, it was only Robin who double-took at the appearance of a shadow just behind Lester against the stained glass. In particular, the moment the shape raised a right knee and delivered a kick to the gigantic, cracking glass wall, a kick that shattered it into a million pieces. Though Robin was the only one to initially notice, every eye turned toward the figure who stepped into the chaos, particularly Lester as he turned ghostly pale and screamed, "Oh God! No! Please! No!" In the few times Cassandra managed to look into the chapel, there had always been something uncanny about the blonde Mary, garbed in royal purple. It was only when she reached the outside again that it occurred to her that the figure, by pure coincidence, looked almost exactly like Stephanie. So there she stood, garbed in the remains of a spoiler uniform, forgoing the mask so her skin was clearly visible, and her hair could easily shape around her face. With the original mural destroyed, it was nigh impossible to realize she didn't look exactly the same, only further aggravated by the heavy amounts of epiphany running through the minds of the preacher and the rest of the seraphim servants. "Madonna!" Lester stared in disbelief, his mouth open in awe and terror. You fools! Get on your knees! We're in the presence of the Mother of God!" The battle ended instantly as many genuflected toward their appointed Mary, an act that relieved some of their opponents, but made others, particularly Stephanie, uncomfortable. "Wait! Everyone, wait!" Stephanie said. I'm not your Madonna. I'm not the Virgin Mary. I want you to listen to me, but I'm not!" She expected some kind of resistance to this, but to her surprise, none came. The chapel remained totally silent. "I'm not the Virgin Mary, but I was sent by God. I know I was," she said. "I was sent by God because everything you're doing is wrong." A small talk overtook the congregation for a moment, though many, Lester in particular, just waited with increased looks of discomfort and fear. "Listen to me. I know every one of you was trying to do what was, somehow, taught to you to be the right thing. But right now I'm here to prove that it isn't. After all, I'm here and your master isn't. He isn't even communicating with you." How do you know that?" Lester said. "I told you. I was sent by God," Stephanie said. It wasn't true, not necessarily at least. Cassandra just explained the circumstances within the chapel and the ensuing struggle. And for her part, Stephanie remembered what she herself had taught Cassandra way back when they read the Old Testament. Sometimes a story didn't need to be true to be important. The response instantly silenced Lester. "Listen, do any of you really think this is what God wants?" she said. "Did Jesus kill all the high priests because they questioned his authority? Did he tell you to hate your neighbor and trust in destruction? Did he ever say to start any of this? But the seraphim, he's like those high priests from Jesus' time," Stephanie said. "He's corrupted by his own power, brainwashed into thinking God is some terrible force of evil and dissent. Well, he's not!" The turning of any other congregation's worshippers against their primary disciples would ordinarily have been a far more laborious task. But thankfully for Stephanie and the rest, every one of their minds still swam with hallucinogenics, and struggled to comprehend how anything but God could have possibly forced these moments together. Lester only half-heartedly said, But, And what kind of heaven is it you really want? Stephanie asked. A heaven full of violent destroyers and hate-mongers who did everything in the name of God without questioning anything? Or maybe that everyone deserves a shot. I told you, I was sent by God. God is only interested in the latter, and none of you have any chance of making it there at this rate. Batman gave her a nod of approval as the room went silent, before Lester pushed back to his feet and asked, Will God forgive us, O subordinate of his almighty mother? Stephanie stared at him, wondered for a moment how much destruction he was already responsible for in his life, before she gently said, Give me the detonator. White as a ghost, Lester raised the controller and placed it in her hand. We are sorry we forced you to come, servant of the Virgin. There are atheists out there doing a better job getting into heaven than you are right now. Stephanie looked up at him. You've all got a long way to go, but it's never too late. Not for God. We'll leave this place for good. Honest. We're sick of the Seraphim killing our friends. I've been looking for an excuse, but I never thought one would come. Please, Lester said, still terribly shaken. We would do anything to win back God's favor. Yeah? Stephanie crossed the room and handed the detonator to an exhausted-looking Batman, who examined it up and down and located its radio receiver, destroyed it in one motion, and rendered the trigger useless. Then you can start by telling my friends here where the Seraphim's toys are so we can destroy them. That helicopter back at Arkham in particular seemed to come out of nowhere. Yes, of course, Lester said. I can take you to the trams. I swear, we can destroy it all. All of you, out of the chapel! We can stay here no longer! It took a few moments of silence before the Mini filed out of the room, and the Batman family and Birds of Prey could totally accept that the fight was finally over. As they did, Tim grabbed Stephanie tight in a big hug. Steph, I can't even believe it! I don't know how you did it, but you saved us! All of us! Always... Ow! Not so tight. Always a pleasure, Tim. Stephanie flashed him and the rest a broad smile. But that does raise the question. How did you know to do all that? Huntress asked. I got a call an hour ago from Cassie. Did you know? It was mentioned over a headset that was forced onto me, Batman said. I know Cassandra's out there, somewhere, facing the Seraphim. Nightwing, Birds of Prey. Follow Lester and destroy all that equipment. Contact me the instant you reach the surface. I need to know you haven't been double-crossed. Robin, spoiler, you're coming with me. It's time to find Angel and put a stop to this. Once and for all. Every word out of Lester's mouth and many from Stephanie's registered within the Seraphim and Angel's headsets, the first of whom constantly screamed, No! No! All throughout as Angel let out a weak little laugh. The Seraphim obtained all his followers through lies and malice. Now they'd been destroyed by lies born from goodness. As the feeling and power slowly returned to the Seraphim's body, the giant pushed to his feet and gripped his hammer with absolute fury. You've ruined them! He raised the hammer over his head. I'll kill you! I'll kill you! As he took his swing, Angel rolled out of the way and made one last dash toward the nave. After a little struggle from his still recovering bones, the Seraphim ran after her, only to find Angel had disappeared. It took him a moment to realize, but, to his unnerve, he suddenly realized it was nearly time for midnight mass, and the church was empty. What? What? It was a demand. Where are they? I can't die if I can't take any sinners with me! The whole building's on police lockdown. No one in or out until the vigilante situation is clear. Father Ryan called from the opposite side of the building. I told them not to flash their lights just yet, not to try and attract your attention, lest you find out they were trying to keep everyone else outside and destroy this church in anger. The priest clutched his beloved snowball and leaned against the wall of his office. He leveled a glare at the Seraphim with a satisfied look on his face. I heard you yelling. I take it you've lost. No, old man. The Seraphim reached into a pouch by one of his boots, produced a tiny container, inputted a numeric code, and drew the last detonator. I haven't. You, the Angel, me, we're all going to die tonight. Before his finger could reach the trigger, A bright white blur rushed at him from behind, kicked the detonator from his hand, and grabbed it out of mid-air. The Seraphim yelled in opposition as Angel dodged backwards, the detonator out for him to see. "Take it from me," Angel said in challenge. In a renewed frenzy, the Seraphim rushed at her, determined to reclaim what his madness insisted was his only means of escape from this miserable existence. Toward the front of the apse Angel ran, the trigger clutched in her hand for dear life. When she reached the front of the cathedral, Angel drew her grappling hook, fired, and latched onto the crucifix at the center of the wall. She attained higher ground and landed in the small alcove that jutted out from a panel of stained glass. The Seraphim stared up at her in confusion as Angel kicked at the panel at the bottom over and over again, until it shattered and produced a hole just small enough for her to slip under. As she did, it only took a few seconds for the pounding of her fist to shatter the panel and send many pieces of small glass flying toward the altar. What was that?" the Seraphim said. "This is your last chance," Angel said. "Surrender, now." Confusion turned again to anger as the Seraphim took his stance with the mallet. "Never!" By now, Angel was sure of her statement. She observed his strategies and the way he did battle. She'd seen every attack in his repertoire, but most importantly, she'd seen how to counter his immortality and seemingly unstoppable healing abilities. Everything she needed was right on the floor. As the mallet hit the ground, Angel grabbed 2 shards of the shattered glass and stabbed them into 2 pressure points along the Seraphim's right arm. With another shout of pain, the arm fell limp for a moment, but she gave him no time to recover. With another dodge to his left side, Angel mimicked the action and stabbed him a few more times in exactly the same way. The Seraphim was already cringing and struggling as he was forced to release the mallet and desperately tried to lower his mouth to the shards to remove them, only to allow Angel the chance to strike and force more glass into the pressure points in his chest, a new handful at the ready every time her hands went empty. The Seraphim's cries of pain were soon replaced with ones of abject horror as his whole body began to go numb. His chest slumped over after numerous piercings. He fell to his knees after strikes to his legs. His arms remained useless at his side. A few well-placed stabs left him unable to even move his neck, as Angel combined the numbing of pressure point strikes with the power of a knife. Against any other opponent this would have proved deadly from the earliest strokes. But against the Seraphim, it successfully obstructed his body's ability to heal. Angel held a last shard of glass in her hand as she looked down at the defeated Daniel Leibowitz, before she decided not to take any chances. For the 3rd time she thrust at his heart. And this time, she finally got the results she'd sought. Angel took a few steps back from the kneeling Leibowitz and stared at her opponent, as if challenging him to do something. But try as he may, nothing but the smallest of cringes ran through his body. "It can't be! I can't move!" "Finally finished," Angel said. "God's will is done."